On our wedding night, I was the one who poured the drinks, who kept her glass full until her eyes glazed over. Then I put her in a Lyft and sent her to her ex-boyfriend's hotel. I also sent an anonymous tip, complete with a room number, to TMZ. The next morning, the hashtag Golden Girl Cheats on Wedding Night was trending on Twitter. Photos of my new wife, Claire, in bed with her ex, Julian Croft, were everywhere. The internet mob descended, and Claire was buried under an avalanche of hate until she had a complete breakdown. A few days later, Claire's mother knelt on the pavement in the middle of campus, clutching the leg of my jeans. "Please, Caleb," Claire said, "you were the one who sent her to the hotel. Just tell me the truth." I kicked her hand away. She tumbled backward onto the brick walkway, and I looked down at her without a flicker of emotion. I was drunk. I don't remember a thing. She pulled a thick stack of printer paper from a tote bag. "Caleb Hayes, you need to see this." She slammed the papers against my chest, and they scattered across the ground. They were all screenshots from Twitter, Instagram, and dozens of gossip blogs. The comment sections were a cesspool of filth. The Sullivan heiress is a common whore. Someone should burn this slut at the stake. Mrs. Sullivan's voice was a raw shriek, her knuckles white from clenching her fists. "She can't even leave the house. The security guards in our own building look at her like she's trash," she wailed. "What did she ever do to you? Why would you destroy her like this?" I bent down and picked up a single sheet of paper. I stared impassively at the photo of Claire and Julian and at the venomous captions beneath it. Then I casually tossed it into a nearby trash can. "Ma'am, didn't she bring this on herself?" Mrs. Sullivan froze. A second later, she scrambled to the trash can like a feral animal, plunging her hands inside to rescue the crumpled page. How can you say that?" I pulled a cigarette from my pocket and lit it, the flame dancing at my fingertips. "If you want to know why she was in Julian Croft's room, you should probably ask her." Just then, a black Bentley screeched to a halt at the curb in front of us. Claire's father, Arthur Sullivan, stormed out of the car. "Caleb, you son of a bitch." He grabbed the collar of my jacket, his grip so tight it forced me back a step. "You've humiliated the Sullivan family. Do you have any idea how many points our stock has dropped because of this circus?" A crowd of students was starting to form, pointing and whispering. "That's him, Caleb Hayes from the economics department, the one who married Claire Sullivan. I heard he handed his wife over to her ex on their wedding night. Is that for real? That's cold-blooded." The murmurs were getting louder. Arthur's face was a mask of fury. "You were jealous, weren't you?" he roared. "Jealous that she was still in love with Julian. So you set this whole thing up?" I let out a cold laugh, blowing a smoke ring that momentarily obscured his face. "Mr. Sullivan, what do I have to be jealous of?" I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "I have no interest in another man's leftovers. Frankly, she disgusts me." "Caleb, you say that one more time." Arthur was trembling with rage, his hand raised to strike me. "Stop." Claire's best friend, Megan Vance, ran up and blocked his path. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her gaze, fixed on me, was ice-cold. "Don't dirty your hands on him, Mr. Sullivan." She turned to me, holding up her phone. The screen was lit, showing a massive iMessage group chat. "Caleb, I've taken the liberty of compiling everything you've done," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "In a moment, I'm sending it to the university alumni network, every company you've ever interned for, and the HR departments of every firm you've applied to. You ruined Claire's life. I'm going to ruin your future." Megan's words were like daggers. "Have you forgotten when you had appendicitis and couldn't afford the hospital bill? Do you remember Claire, crying and begging her father to cover it for you? She turned down Julian for you. She turned down a dozen guys who were 100 times better than you, all for you. And this is how you repay her." I snuffed out my cigarette on the pavement, grinding it under the toe of my shoe. "So what?" I looked up, a sneer playing on my lips. "You all saw how good she was to me. But did any of you see the hell I went through for her? Do any of you have a clue what she's really like behind closed doors? Don't you dare walk away." Megan grabbed my arm. "The police are on their way." I yanked my arm free. She stumbled back, falling into the arms of a man standing behind her. It was Julian. He steadied Megan with a sorrowful expression before stepping toward me, his face a mask of pained disappointment. "Caleb, I know you hate me," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "But Claire is innocent in all of this. Why would you use her to get back at me? Seeing his phony act made my stomach turn. I knew the truth better than anyone, and I had kept it buried. Caleb, the entire internet is doxing her. She's terrified to even look at her phone, Mrs. Sullivan sobbed, pounding her own chest in anguish. She just wakes up and cries in her blankets. She's only 23. What is she going to do with the rest of her life? I never let anything hurt her, and you've turned her into this. This ghost. The crowd was now openly glaring at me with disgust. Arthur Sullivan took a deep breath, his voice raspy. You and Claire are married. Even if you don't love her, you can't just destroy her with these kinds of gutter tactics. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms. Just then, the dean of the economics department, Dean Wallace, hurried over, having heard the commotion. His face darkened as his severe gaze landed on me. Caleb, do you realize the extremely negative impact your actions are having on this university's reputation? He boomed. Malicious slander, intentional infliction of emotional distress. If these allegations are proven true, you won't just be expelled, you'll be facing serious legal charges. I looked up at the dean and gave a slight, dismissive smirk. Dean Wallace, if you think I've broken the law, you can have the police arrest me right now, I said calmly. But my story stands. I don't know anything. You can't beat a confession out of me, can you? My defiant attitude left him speechless with fury. Arthur Sullivan, however, was past reason. He pointed a trembling finger at me. Caleb, you are a heartless monster. Claire is in a hospital, practically out of her mind, crying your name into her pillow every night. She was so blind to have ever loved you. I laughed out loud. Mr. Sullivan, if your daughter is so mentally unstable, how can you possibly believe a word she says? I retorted. Maybe she still had a thing for her ex, snuck into his room in the middle of the night, and got caught. Now that she's been exposed, she's playing crazy to pin the blame on me. If you really want to help her, you should be getting her a psychiatrist, not standing here listening to her delusions. A collective gasp went through the crowd. What the hell is wrong with you, man? Claire's already going through hell, and you're still trying to drag her through the mud. That's just evil. Even if you break up, you don't slander your ex like that, let alone your wife. Arthur Sullivan lunged forward and slapped me hard across the face. The sting was sharp and immediate. I'll kill you today, you sick, twisted bastard. Marrying you was the worst luck of Claire's life. The students around us cheered. Yeah, beat his ass. Someone should kick the shit out of this psycho. They looked like they wanted to join in. I stared at their contorted, hateful faces and laughed internally. They weren't defending Claire's honor. They were just seizing the chance to tear down the poor kid who had somehow landed their campus golden girl. They'd always resented me for it. Now they had their chance to kick me while I was down, and they were savoring every moment. I took a deep breath, and suddenly I smiled. You really think I was lucky to marry her? I shouted. If it wasn't for the Sullivan family money, I wouldn't have touched her with a 10-foot pole. She's a pathetic tramp who isn't even worthy of shining my shoes. My words hit the crowd like a bomb. Everyone was stunned into silence by my sheer, shameless cruelty. Arthur and his wife were pale as ghosts. Caleb, you ungrateful snake. Mrs. Sullivan was the first to snap out of it, shrieking as she lunged at me, her nails aimed at my face. Everything you have, your food, your clothes, it came from us. We treated you like a son, and this is how you repay us. Arthur followed with another punch that caught me on the corner of my mouth. I staggered back, my head hitting the cold brick wall of the building behind me. A sharp pain shot through my back. I was so blind, Arthur seethed. I thought you were a decent, hard-working kid. I thought I could trust you with Claire. It turns out I was just feeding a viper. I wiped a smear of blood from my lip, about to fire back. But Arthur was staring at me, a sudden, dark suspicion flashing in his eyes. You were trying to break her, he exclaimed, his voice suddenly rising. The crowd fell silent, all eyes on me, hungry for more drama. You deliberately ruined her reputation, made her an outcast, so she would have no one left in the world to depend on but you, he accused. You systematically destroyed her pride and her self-worth to make her pathologically dependent on you. Arthur suddenly pulled a few printed pages from his pocket and threw them in my face. Look, everyone, these are texts he sent to Claire. Good morning, good night. He even told her what clothes to wear. If that's not psychological abuse, what is? Mrs. Sullivan sobbed and nodded. That explains it. Claire used to say you were hot and cold with her, that it made her miserable, but she couldn't leave you. You're insecure and twisted. So you had to drag her down from her pedestal and pull her into the mud with you, to make her as dirty as you are. We were going to sign over the deed to the Southside Development property to you as soon as you were married. Arthur yelled, "How could you do this to her?" I watched their performance, this duet of righteous indignation, and found it utterly absurd. They would rather believe this convoluted theory than consider that the truth might be something far, far uglier. I lit another cigarette. "The deed," I said with a cold smile. "You can keep it." I reached into my own pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was of Claire in her wedding dress. In front of everyone, I ripped it in half. "Underneath this beautiful white dress," I said, my voice low and clear, "is a body that's already been used and thrown away by Julian Croft." The air seemed to freeze. Everyone was looking at me like I was a madman. Their faces were filled with a mixture of shock and fury. Mrs. Sullivan's lips turned purple with rage. She looked like she was about to faint. But just then, a weak, trembling voice came from the back of the crowd. "Caleb, why would you say that about me?" It was Claire. Her voice felt like a knife in my back. The crowd parted. I slowly turned and saw her standing at the edge of the circle. She was wearing a loose-fitting hospital gown, so thin she looked like she could be blown away by a breeze. Her once vibrant face was now a bloodless, pale mask. Her bright, almond-shaped eyes, which always seemed to be smiling, were hollow and empty. Dark circles pooled beneath them like bruises. Julian and a couple of nurses stood beside her. The moment Mrs. Sullivan saw her daughter, she ran over, sobbing, and threw her arms around her. "Claire, my baby, why did you leave the hospital? You're not well." But Claire didn't respond to her mother. She was staring only at me, her eyes quickly filling with tears. Her voice was a whisper, but it made my heart clench. "Caleb, I loved you so much. I would have given up anything for you," she said. "Why are you doing this to me? Why did you say I'm disgusting?" I looked at her, at this shattered version of the woman I loved, and felt my feet rooted to the spot. I couldn't move. Seeing my silence, her tears fell faster. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably, her emotions on the verge of collapsing entirely. "Our wedding night. You told me," she cried out. "You said if I just listened to you, if I went to that room and got the evidence, we could be together forever." As she spoke, her trembling hand reached into the pocket of her gown and pulled out a small, black audio recorder. I glanced at it, the one I bought 3 years ago. She clutched it in her fist. "But why did you lie to me?" she screamed. "Why did you send my location to the press? Why did you push me into hell? Caleb, our whole plan is on this recorder. Why are you denying it? Why?" Claire's outburst sent the already agitated crowd into a frenzy. A recorder? What plan? He was the mastermind. Oh my God, this guy's terrifying. He planned this whole thing just to ruin Claire and Julian. I knew he was a psycho. "Get the recorder." Arthur Sullivan's face turned a ghastly shade of white. He lunged at Claire, trying to snatch the recorder from her hand. "Give me that." I moved instinctively to stop him, but Megan and a few other angry students blocked my way. "You're not going anywhere, Caleb. We're going to expose you for the manipulative monster you are." One of them shouted. A guy ripped off one of his smelly sneakers and slapped it across my face. "That's for insulting our goddess." The crowd roared with laughter. After hitting me, he drove his foot straight into my chest. I coughed up a mouthful of blood and spit, which splattered on the ground. My head slammed against the corner of the brick wall, and my vision blurred. Through the haze, I saw Julian standing at the edge of the crowd, his phone out, recording the beating. In the end, Arthur managed to wrench the recorder, the device that held my fate, from Claire's hand. With a look of triumphant revenge, he pressed the play button. A crackle of static filled the air. It was followed by a recorded conversation. Instantly, Arthur's face went bone white. He snapped his head toward me, his eyes wide with terror. "You," he stammered, his voice trembling. Julian rushed over, grabbed the recorder, and held it to his ear. A second later, his expression changed to one of pure horror. The crowd looked on, confused. I wiped the blood from my mouth and managed a grim, bloody smile. "Mr. Sullivan now, do you still want me to tell the truth?" Arthur Sullivan let out a roar and smashed the recorder on the ground. Crack! The black plastic casing shattered into pieces. Everyone was stunned by his sudden violence. Arthur was panting, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me. "It was you, you devious little bastard," he screamed, rushing forward and kicking me hard again and again. "You're the one who did this to my Claire." He kicked and screamed, and I curled into a ball, the pain so intense I couldn't even groan. That's when Mrs. Sullivan picked up the shattered remains of the recorder. When she saw that it was just an empty plastic shell, a dummy model, the color drained from her face. Then her eyes turned wild. She grabbed a metal dustpan from a janitor's cart nearby and, with a blood-curdling scream, swung it at my head. "Caleb, I'll kill you. You animal." Her voice was shrill, her eyes filled with murderous rage. I tried to move, but my body was screaming in agony. "Stop right there." Two police officers ran up, grabbing the dustpan from Mrs. Sullivan's hands. Seeing the police, she clutched at them as if they were a lifeline. "Officer, it was him!" she shrieked, pointing at me. "He framed my daughter. Arrest him. Execute him." Arthur, his face grim, quickly chimed in. "Officers, this man is dangerously manipulative. He just confessed himself. This was all his plan. You have to make him pay." The police looked from my battered form on the ground to the enraged crowd in back, their brows furrowed. The older officer knelt and briefly examined my injuries before giving his partner a subtle look. Everyone fell silent, waiting for the verdict. Lying on the ground, my head clearing slightly, I actually felt a sense of relief now that the police were here. After a few moments, the younger officer approached me, his expression stern. "You're a person of interest in an assault and defamation case. You need to come with us." Gritting my teeth against the pain, I pushed myself up from the pavement, ignoring the jeers and curses from the crowd. "Fine, I'll cooperate." But just as they were about to lead me away, Claire, who had been silent, suddenly burst from the crowd. She threw herself in front of the police car, her arms spread wide. She looked at the officers, tears streaming silently down her face. "The evidence is fake," she cried. "Caleb is innocent. If he had really done it, I would have deserved it. But the person who framed me, it wasn't him. You can't take him." Claire's desire to marry me was more real than anything. 2 years ago, on a normal rainy weekend, we were curled up on the sofa in my tiny rental apartment, watching an old movie. She paused it, took the pull tab off the empty can of craft beer she'd just finished, and carefully bent the sharp edges down with her thumbnail. Then she held up the small metal ring and looked at me seriously. "Caleb," she said, her face tilted up, her eyes brighter than any star in the movie. "I don't need a diamond ring or a big wedding. I just need you. Let's call this a down payment, okay?" In that moment, the sound of the rain outside became the most romantic soundtrack in the world. Seeing her daughter defending me now, Mrs. Sullivan rushed over in a panic and pulled her away. "Claire, are you insane? Look at what he's done to you." A doctor stepped forward and spoke to the police. "She has PTSD," he said authoritatively. "It's common for victims to develop a dependency on their abuser. Her testimony isn't reliable." Hearing the doctor's words only fueled Arthur's rage. He pointed at me and roared, "Caleb, you monster! What kind of hold do you have on her?" He then added a new lie. "Caleb has hundreds of naked pictures of Claire on his phone, all taken without her knowledge. He's been using them to blackmail her, to make her do whatever he says." The crowd, hearing this, finally had a reasonable explanation for my supposed evil. The tide of hatred swelled again. I knew there was something wrong with him. He must have had something on her. That's disgusting. Control freaks like him should rot in hell. What are the cops waiting for? Arrest him already. A girl ran forward and raked her keys across my cheek, drawing blood. My friend was controlled by a psycho ex-boyfriend, just like you. This is for her. More people surged forward. Someone kicked me in the ribs. Someone else pulled my hair. A middle-aged man picked up a trash can and brought it down on me. I was curled on the ground, blood pooling in my mouth. Phones were pointed at me, their flashes blinding. "Look, the psycho abuser is getting what he deserves. Post it on TikTok. Let the whole world see this scumbag." The police tried to intervene, but were pushed aside by the angry mob. They stood back, frowning, but didn't try to force their way through again. Maybe they thought I deserved it, too. Just when I thought I was actually going to be beaten to death, Claire fought free from her mother's grasp. With a desperate scream, She threw herself over me, shielding my body with her own. Stop it. Please stop hitting him. Her back immediately took the force of several heavy blows. Her sobs and screams finally brought the frenzied crowd to a halt. Claire lifted her head. Her small face, streaked with tears and dirt, was now smeared with the blood from my forehead. She looked broken, yet defiant. I'm really in love with him. It's not some kind of PTSD, she insisted. She paused, taking a deep breath as if gathering all the courage she had left in the world. She turned her head, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. Finally, her eyes landed on Julian and her father. And, she stammered, the ones who hurt me. Were you? Everyone was stunned. Their gazes darted between Claire, Julian, and Arthur Sullivan. Julian looked shocked and hurt. Claire, what are you saying? Has the stress been too much? Are you delirious? Mrs. Sullivan was the first to protest, grabbing Claire's arm, her voice trembling. Claire, look closely. That's your father. How could he possibly hurt you? Arthur's face was a thundercloud. Claire, have you not caused enough trouble? He barked. You can't let this lowlife manipulate you into slandering innocent people. Did he put you up to this? Is he trying to drag us down with him to save his own skin? The crowd began to murmur again. Yeah, how could Julian and Mr. Sullivan do something like that? This has to be Caleb's doing. He's cornered and trying to take them with him. Claire's completely lost it. She's protecting her enemy and attacking her own family. But she didn't back down. She just stared at the two men, her eyes filled with a deep, burning hatred. A police officer stepped between us, speaking to her sternly. Miss, please calm down. On the night in question, didn't you go with him willingly? Claire sniffled, about to speak, when Arthur cut her off. Officer, my daughter is having a psychotic episode. You can't take her word for anything. I lay on the ground, my mouth full of the coppery taste of blood. Claire was trembling more violently now, her lips bitten white. She looked up at Arthur Sullivan, her expression one of utter despair. Dad, that night, you were the one who handed me that glass of drug wine. You watched as Julian dragged me into that room. The words, though spoken softly, seemed to suck the air out of the courtyard. Arthur's face went slack. Mrs. Sullivan froze for a second, then shrieked, shaking Claire by the shoulders. Claire, how can you accuse your own father? You really have gone crazy. Claire, you look at me. Say that again. Arthur suddenly broke down. He lunged at me, his hands closing around my throat. It's all your fault. It's all your fault, you bastard, he screamed, squeezing with terrifying strength. I couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in my vision. You're the one who made her talk this nonsense. Made her accuse her own father. I'm going to kill you right here. My face was turning purple. The police finally managed to pull Arthur off me. One of them knelt, looking at me with a cold, professional gaze. Get up. You're coming to the station. Claire's testimony is full of holes and has low credibility. Right now, both you and Julian Croft are persons of interest. A younger cop offered a hand to help me up, but I brushed it away. Using my arms, I pushed myself off the ground, inch by inch, until I was standing on my own. There's no need to investigate. I knew you wouldn't believe her, I said, my voice raspy. From the day this happened, I knew it would come to this. What's that supposed to mean, Hayes? The lead officer asked, frowning. I didn't answer immediately. My eyes were locked on Arthur and Julian. They hadn't recovered their composure. Fear flickered behind their eyes. I walked slowly to Claire's side. I reached out and gently wiped the tear tracks from her face with my thumb. She was still shaking. My heart ached for her. I touched her cheek, and she finally broke, collapsing into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. It's okay now. It's all over, I whispered, patting her back, soothing her. Now, tell them everything. Claire cried in my arms for a long time before she slowly calmed down. I held her by the shoulders and had her face the crowd. Then I spoke for her. On the night of the wedding, it was him, Arthur Sullivan, who drugged his own daughter, I announced. And then he let Julian Croft drag her into that hotel room. The crowd erupted again. What is going on? I'm so confused. Arthur shrieked, trying to rush me and shut me up, but the police held him back. How could I possibly know about that? Caleb, you'll tell any lie to save yourself. Mrs. Sullivan echoed him through her tears. That's right. Everyone knows how much Arthur adores Claire. Don't try to turn us against each other. Julian put on his pained expression again. Caleb, I know you resent me, but you can't make up lies like this just for revenge. Claire knows better than anyone how much her father loves her. As expected, the crowd's opinion swayed back to them. See, I knew Mr. Sullivan couldn't have done it. This Caleb guy is truly evil. He'd even make up a story like that to drag Julian down. Claire's been brainwashed. She can't even tell friend from foe anymore. Claire's tears started again. I knew this was the nightmare she had been holding inside for 3 long years. It was also the key that would unlock the entire truth. 3 years ago, at my birthday party, she began, her voice gaining strength. My dad handed me a glass of juice. After I drank it, I blacked out. I woke up in a hotel bed, and Julian was lying next to me. He was holding his phone, showing me pictures of me. What he did to me. For the past 3 years, Julian has used those photos to harass me, to threaten me, even to beat me. And my father, he didn't just know about it. He was an accessory because he needed an investment from Julian's family to save his own company from bankruptcy. Arthur's face turned ashen. He lunged, trying to cover Claire's mouth, but an officer blocked him again. You're lying, he screamed, his eyes wild. You got drunk and went to the hotel with Julian yourself. It had nothing to do with me. Mrs. Sullivan rushed forward and slapped Claire hard across the face. A red handprint instantly appeared on her cheek. Claire, how can you be so ungrateful? She cried. Your father has been sick with worry over you, and now you make up these vicious lies to slander him. Claire's head snapped to the side from the force of the blow, but she didn't cry. She just slowly turned back to her mother, her eyes filled with a profound and weary disappointment. Mom, did you really not know anything? Or had you been helping him lie to me all this time? Her mother faltered, then hardened her heart again. I only know that your father is a good man, and that you've lost your mind. At this point, the lead officer stepped up to Claire. Miss Sullivan, you're accusing your father and Julian Croft of a conspiracy to assault you. Do you have any proof? Claire's body went rigid. She slowly shook her head, her voice dropping to a whisper. No, I can't find any proof. They erased every trace of it years ago. I remembered that night on the beach, when Claire lay in my arms and confessed all of these buried secrets through her tears. That's when I learned that behind her glamorous life as the campus golden girl was a living hell. She had never dared to speak up, never dared to fight back. We had to blow this up, had to drag me into the center of the storm because there was no other way to get her out. She knew that without proof, no one would ever believe her. Arthur Sullivan, the doting father. Julian Croft, the handsome, charming heir. Who would believe they were demons in human skin? They knew it, too. It was why they were so bold, so willing to turn the tables and pin everything on me. When Arthur and Julian heard Claire say she had no proof, twin smirks of relief and victory appeared on their faces. Doctor, get her back to the hospital now. Her condition is getting worse. Arthur commanded. Then he turned to the police and pointed at me. Officers, arrest him. He's the one who coached her to say these things. He's the one who's driving her insane. The doctor moved toward Claire, but she shrank behind me, clutching my shirt, her eyes wide with terror. I took her cold hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. Then I looked up, staring at the 2 men who thought they had already won. You're right, I said, my voice like ice. There was no proof before, but from the moment you 2 grabbed and smashed that fake recorder, you created the proof yourselves. The color drained from their faces again. What kind of nonsense are you spouting now? Arthur stammered, taking a step back. I smashed that thing because you were using it to frame my daughter. Were you? I took a step toward them. If your conscience is so clear, why were you in such a panic to destroy it? What were you so afraid of? I spoke slowly and deliberately. 3 months ago, I planted a micro-recorder in Claire's bedroom. For the last 3 months, every time you went to see her, every time you threatened her, every time you humiliated her, every single word you said has been recorded. Their facades finally crumbled. Julian was the first to lunge at me. You're lying. You fabricated evidence. A cop grabbed him. I took a small USB drive from my pocket and handed it to the lead officer. Detective, everything you need to know is on here. A few minutes later, a technician had the audio playing through a portable speaker. The noisy courtyard fell silent. Arthur Sullivan's voice, clear as day, filled the air. Claire, don't blame your father for being cruel. The Croft investment is too important for us right now. Just endure a little longer. As soon as the company goes public, I'll let you break things off with that poor kid, Caleb, for good." Then came Julian's voice, even more vile and boastful. "Babe, you'd better be a good girl. Otherwise, I can't guarantee those photos of yours won't end up on all your classmates' phones. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Don't make me force you." The evidence was irrefutable. The two men began to tremble violently. Arthur pointed a shaking finger at the speaker. I was just angry. I thought it contained something that would hurt Claire. To protect her, I said, turning my gaze to the now ashen-faced Julian. Then what exactly are you protecting in your phone's photo album? You say you love Claire, yet your phone is full of those disgusting photos and videos. Is that how you show your love? No, that's not it. She was willing. Julian shrieked, his body shaking as he subconsciously clutched his pocket. Willing or not, a quick search will tell us, I said, looking at the police. Detective, if you please. Check his phone. Julian tried to resist, but two officers were already on him. One pinned his shoulders while the other pulled the phone from his pocket. Password, the officer barked. Julian clamped his jaw shut. The officer didn't waste time. He found Julian's driver's license in his other pocket and used it to unlock the phone with facial recognition. Click. The screen lit up. Julian panicked completely, trying to grab the phone back. You can't. That's my private property. An officer twisted his arm behind his back and forced him to the ground. You are now a suspect in multiple sexual assault cases. We have every right to search your devices. Resisting arrest will only add to your charges. The officer opened a locked folder on Julian's phone named Trophies. The air was sucked out of the courtyard. On the screen, it wasn't just Claire. There were more than a dozen other girls, their faces young and scared. They were all in various states of undress, their eyes vacant, posed in humiliating positions in different hotel rooms. Each photo was time-stamped. I recognized one of the girls immediately. She was a friend of Claire's from high school. Last month, she had jumped from the balcony of her family's apartment. The news said it was depression. Now I knew the real reason. A wave of gasps and horrified whispers rippled through the crowd that had gathered to look. Finally, Julian's legs gave out, and he collapsed in a heap on the ground. He buried his head, all his previous arrogance and charisma gone. The truth was out in the cruelest way imaginable. Claire was trembling, tears streaming down her face, but she made no sound. She just bit her lip so hard it was a wonder it didn't bleed, as if trying to swallow all the pain and humiliation back down. The night before we set our plan in motion, Claire had held me, crying, saying she was scared. Scared it would fail, scared I would get hurt, scared she would be dragged back into that endless hell. I held her and told her not to be. This time, I was betting with her. If we won, we would start a new life together. If we lost, I would fall into the abyss with her. We knew Arthur and Julian were too cunning, too powerful, to be brought down by conventional means. That's why we devised this plan to smoke them out, a big public trial to force them to expose themselves. Nearby, Mrs. Sullivan, after seeing the photos, finally broke. She covered her face and let out a heart-wrenching wail. What have we done? Oh God, what have we done? She wiped her eyes, her voice choked with grief, looking as if she'd aged 10 years in an instant. I wasn't trying to protect him, not really. I don't have a job. He pays for everything. If I exposed him, he would have killed me. I tried to tell him to leave Claire alone, but he wouldn't listen. At this point, no one had the heart to blame this woman, who was just another victim of this monstrous family. Bastards. They're both monsters. They act so respectable, but they're pure evil underneath. No wonder Claire ended up with a breakdown. Anyone with a father and an ex like that would lose their mind. Kill them. Scum like that deserve to be drawn and quartered. The crowd began to surge forward again, a tsunami of rage. Someone kicked Julian and Arthur to the ground, and then they were swarmed, countless feet stomping down on them. Their pathetic cries were drowned out by the roar of the mob. They curled up, protecting their heads like two pathetic dogs, all fight gone from them. The police pushed through the crowd and snapped handcuffs on both Julian's and Arthur's wrists. Julian Croft, Arthur Sullivan, you are under arrest. You're coming with us to the station. Later, following the evidence on Julian's phone, The police were able to identify and rescue several other girls he had victimized and controlled. Arthur Sullivan was convicted for his role in the conspiracy and received a long prison sentence. Julian was sentenced to death. Before his execution, his crimes became known within the prison, and he was subjected to special attention from a guard whose own family member had been a victim of assault. His final days were a living hell. He was executed in a state of absolute terror and remorse. We left that city, a place that held too much pain. We moved to a small coastal town in Maine. We rented a little house with a yard overlooking the ocean. Claire started a garden. We adopted a cat. Every morning, she walks along the beach and watches the sun climb slowly from the horizon, spilling gold across the world. And finally, the light has returned to her eyes. The other day, we were sitting on the porch swing. She was leaning against my shoulder, looking at the flowers blooming in her garden. "Caleb," she said suddenly, "let's have a baby." Her voice was soft, but it held a new kind of strength I'd never heard before. "A child that belongs to us," she continued. "We'll raise him in a home filled with love. We'll teach him that the world isn't all darkness, that there's sunshine too, and love." I turned and looked at her, at the way the sun illuminated her profile, at her bright, shining eyes. I leaned in and kissed her forehead, and I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. "Okay, I know the scars, the ones carved into her soul, may never fully disappear. They will always be there, reminders of the hell she endured. But at least now, she no longer has to live in fear and despair. At least now, there is light in her world again, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure that light never, ever goes out."